Members, we have formed a quorum and it's already the appointed time. Let's start our meeting of the Subcommittee on Poverty. 3 members would like to join this subcommittee. So what do members say? The first one is Mr. LEUNG Yiu-chung, the second one Mr. CHAN Chi-chuen, and the third one Mr. Charles MOK. What do members think about their... your mic is not on. Well, I support their membership. Okay? Any other views? If not, well, they are accepted. And confirmation of the minutes of the last meeting. Any proposed amendment? We haven't received any proposed amendments so far. So if there are none proposed here, then the minutes confirmed. Today we are going to discuss poverty line, and we have a number of deputations who would like to tell us what they think about the definition of poverty line. At this point, let's invite the officials to join us. We have more than 70 deputations, so we are going to conduct the meeting in 2 sessions. There will be a break in between. We ask that both the deputations in session 1 and 2 to speak first before we invite the administration to respond. Have they been notified? Yes. So the deputations are coming in to join us.
局長同埋各位官員喺邊坐。
Welcome, Secretary. Please be seated in accordance with the seating plan. Well, some of the deputation haven't arrived yet, but let's get started anyway. I would like to remind the deputations that today we're going to have 75 of you. So I can give each one of you 2 minutes to speak. You have already given us the written submissions which have been circulated to members. So 2 minutes each. Second, I want to remind the deputations that your speeches are not afforded protection under the Legislative Council Powers and Privileges Ordinance. So you have to be responsible for your own speeches. Let's start our public hearing. The first one to speak is Mr. Mr. Kelvin Chu from the Against Elderly Abuse of Hong Kong. Thank you. Many deputations have attended this hearing, but I am pessimistic whether their views will be heard by the administration. It just seemed like the occasion where we discussed the OAL aid. Most deputations were against the original proposals, and some pretended they were deaf and they worked with the government to cheat in order to get the proposals endorsed. Having read the administration's paper, I believe the administration is trying to cheat us through a game of words or the false pretenses. It seems that they think the Commission on Poverty can work out everything, every solution. If that's the case, why is it that the population in poverty continues to grow? If that's the case, why isn't the Secretary be held responsible? Why is he still sitting here? And also the former Director of Lands is now the Permanent Secretary for Labour and Welfare Bureau. I don't know whether she knows how to help the poor, whether you understand what is a Gini coefficient and what OECD stands for. According to government statistics in 2011, elderly poverty is on the decline. From 2001 to 2010, we have a population of 288,000 of elderly poor persons. We have asked the government to implement a universal retirement protection system, and there should be a poverty line which should make reference to the international practice of OECD countries, and median family income should be the standard. If one's income falls below that median line, then you are regarded as poor. A poverty line will enable the government to understand how big the elderly or the population of poor people is. And I want to ask the administration not to send your FEHD people to bully those elderly people who are just there to pick up scrap paper for a little money. Next, we have Ms. Lam Manhua from Alliance for Children Development Rights. Well, I want to say that we must have a poverty line. But what can be achieved through this? We are concerned about the effectiveness. Basically, we're talking about two functions that can be served by a poverty line. First, functional, and that is it gives us a measurement tool to understand different sectors, different groups, and how their poverty is affecting them, and how we can devise suitable policies to help them. We hope that apart from looking at income, more should be taken on board in the consideration. Say, in Hong Kong, we have to look at the consumption and expenditure pattern. We have to look at different groups, different families may have different needs. The poverty line should be more comprehensive than just income. Second, it should be a regulatory tool. And that is, the government should target different groups and do something for them, and then there should be proper planning and policy making, and different departments should all work together. If we look at students under the new 334 curriculum, they have a great need for the extracurricular activities, but there's no subsidy or allowance given them. At present, assistance is provided with limited quotas and also with a school-based approach. As for textbook allowance, we have 400,000 people on CSSA, but through the other school-based subsidies schemes, only 27,000 students would be affected. So one wonders how the poverty line would be devised by the Commission on Poverty, and we don't know how is it going to be used as a regulatory tool. There should be better coordination and formulation of a long-term policy to help the poor. Well, I'll read out the names in accordance with the list. Next, we have Yung Puyan, Chen Yan Kam, Mr. Simon Tam from New Territories Evangelical Ambassador. In 2012, the CNS department announced the income statistics through the census. It tells us that the elderly poverty problem is deteriorating. Gini coefficient has increased from 0.525 to 533 to 537. And elderly poverty is more important. Some 900,000 elderly persons are poor, or 32.7%, or 1 in 3 are poor. According to Oxfam, in Hong Kong, we have 1 million working poor, or 650,000 people. How can the Commission devise the poverty line? What is the yardstick? We propose that we should adopt the UN, and that is we draw the line at half of the median family income. The poverty line should be there to promote fairness in the community. Helping the poor encompasses a lot of things. And we have a lot of elderly people who are mentally or physically incapacitated, who are suffering from chronic diseases, or who have no family members to support them. The government should give a subsidy to low-income people, so that those who are working can work and contribute to society with an ease of mind. We have to help the poor, and we should have a long-term strategy to provide more help. The OALA is not a good strategy. 2,200 is insufficient, and there's a means test. You have to fill in the form to get the allowance. This is elderly abuse. We should not adopt an utilitarian approach. We should do more to help tens of thousands of people in poverty. The government should be on the basis of helping those in need. Your time is up. We have got your written submission. Mr. Chowking, if not, Ms. Venny Kwok from North District Employment Concern Group. Yes, I represent some grassroots workers in the North District. We face a lot of pressure in life. Transport fares go up, and then rent goes up, prices go up, and then electricity tariffs are going to be up again. So we are facing a lot of pressure from all sides, and the administration has failed to help we in the grassroots workers, and then the prices are all going up. The administration has totally ignored our affordability. The administration has indeed invested money into things such as vocational training, the food bank, or the employment placement and guidance. Yes, there's no denying that resources have been deployed, but grassroots workers are not benefited at all, or only to a small extent. And because the resources cannot really help grassroots workers, that's why I want to tell the subcommittee that when you set a poverty line, well, according to Dr. Wang Hong of CUHK, or you can see his suggestions online. I won't repeat the same points. Suffice it to say that we agree with him on how we should set the poverty line. And Oxfam has actually asked workers how we would like to get done. So I hope you can accept the idea of low-income supplement proposed by Oxfam. And that will cover everyone in Hong Kong, not just some of us. Mr. Augustine Yu, if not Ms. Law Pui Shan from Hong Kong Catholic Commission for Labour Affairs. Thank you, Chairman. Hong Kong Catholic Commission for Labour Affairs welcomes the administration's proposal to set a poverty line and the setting up of the Commission on Poverty. We haven't got an official poverty line so far. We have been saying that CSSA is a safety net to help those in need financially. But CSSA allowances are now lagging behind to meet basic living needs. There was previously a CSSA review, and yet the next one is still a way off, some way off. We should take the opportunity to, in setting the poverty line, to carry out a survey on the basic needs of livelihood. You should set out all the necessities needed by a family and also the services needed by them, so that we know what is the basic family expenditure. If some families fall behind them, then they should be regarded as households in need, and then a suitable policy should be devised to help them. The survey or the standards so derived can guide the work of the Minimum Wage Commission and also the Commission on Poverty. And the government should set the poverty line with reference to relative income. We believe the line should be drawn at half of the median family income, and then 40% and 60% of the median family income should be the reference standards, so that we can monitor the moving trend of people in poverty, and also to review and monitor the effectiveness of the poverty policies. And that should also be a standard to take care of different groups of people in need. And departments' efforts should be better coordinated as far as alleviation of poverty is concerned. Let's hope that by all these measures we can improve the situation with poverty in Hong Kong.
Mr. Tham Chun Yin, Labour Party. Now, the Oxfam recently completed a report, and there are figures therein which we feel should be heeded by the society. Now, the report mentioned that the poor population is 1.1 million, and the working poor, they are over 600,000, and in the second quarter of 2012, for median household income, those below 60% of that income, the number of households, that's 240,000 households. So it's quite shocking. And it shows that there is a widening income gap. So the Labour Party requests that there should be a poverty line, should be to provide a policy tool as indicator for aid to low-income and poor people. And how do we draw the line? Our proposal is that we should follow the European Union, and that should be 60% of median average household income. Now, if we set too low a line, it's unable to solve the wide poverty gap in Hong Kong. Now, if we set we should set another line, those that is below subsistence poverty, and that would be the standard for immediate aid by the government. And on average household income, on the definition, we suggest that the government should remove the assistance in kind, and the housing expenditure should be excluded for the calculation of average household income, because we have property hegemony in Hong Kong. People pay a lot of their income for rent. Now, if we do not exclude the rents for public housing and so on, the true picture will not be reflected. I think we can see what you have in our documents. No Wai Hon, Lee Ho Fan, Wong Ho Chung, Wong Wai Kong, Wong Kwai Yao, the Boys and Girls Club Association of Hong Kong. Now, the association has been concerned all along about poverty, especially poverty of children. Since the establishment of our association, we have discussed the poverty line a number of times, but we still don't have that. Now, the government is starting to pay attention to that. Now, the Poverty Commission held a meeting yesterday, and it's been said that it will take a year now to set the line. Now, I suggest that after the commission is established, we provisionally use half of median household income as the poverty line. Now, many groups talked about CSSA level and the minimum wage level will benefit from the establishment of such a line. Now, I hope the government can use the line as an indicator for establishing policies. Now, say, like countries abroad, the poverty rate should be only a certain percentage of that line or in relation to that line. And we need to have a grasp of social mobility. So apart from figures on poverty line, we should have figures on entry to poverty line. Those entering below the poverty line. Now, there should be participation by a wide number of a large number of groups. The LegCo can play a part, and there can be a standing sharing mechanism between the LegCo and the groups outside. This is what we are trying to do at the Commission. Mr. Anthony Soho and Alliance for Universal Pension, Mr. Ouyang Kun Peng. Now, last week at the Council, there was a very unjust act. Now, it's about the old age living allowance, and it seems that it's skillful talk to cover up lies. Now, where's the backbone of our LegCo members? Now, on the old age living allowance, members have their own views. When they ask the government to respond, and the government refuses to budge, and then the members will just back down. Now, when we talk about poverty alleviation, the government will interpret everything as poverty alleviation, old age living allowance, etc. CSSA for the elderly, 170,000. Now, where does the government want to draw the poverty line? The government classifies every problem as a poverty alleviation problem. So it merely leads to greater social discontent and disagreement. Now, the government should take the middle road and have a in between the CSSA and OAA and so on. Now, so we do not have a universal retirement protection mechanism. So the current approach is not appropriate. Mr. Yam Kwok Tong, Hong Kong Association for Democracy and People's Livelihood, member of Kowloon City District Council. Now, many deputations are unable to be represented today because they have been very busy. So I hope we could be given time to ask the Secretary some questions. Our proposal is very simple. The poverty line is not just a line. We hope it can achieve 3 targets. There should be a minimum level, like what the Labour Party is referring to, the assistance, retirement, or rather protection. And now the existing situation is not acceptable. Now the current assistance is inadequate. Now the third standard is a second safety net. Why do we need a second safety net? Because if the government is to introduce some poverty alleviation measure, how many people will be lifted above the line? Now, there would be a gap, or rather a difference that's measurable. And why do we need a second safety net? When we see some people who fall below the second safety net, then the government should have some measures. We think that the government should help those who have fallen below the second safety net but not yet below the poverty line. The government should help them. If government only helps those below poverty line, then a lot of people would be left out. Now, we think that there should be a second safety net to provide a standard for the government to try to help those people who are needy who are not yet below the poverty line. Mr. Charles Ho, Oxfam Hong Kong Policy Officer, Hong Kong Program. Now, the Oxfam welcomes the setting up of the establishment of the poverty line, and it shows a certain degree of commitment by the government. Now, we propose that we have a good indicator so that the public knows about the poverty situation in Hong Kong. It should be unitary. There are several advantages. First, it allows the public and the government to monitor the effectiveness of government anti-poverty measures. And secondly, it helps us monitor the poverty gap and the poor population, how it changes in number. Thirdly, to respond to the community and the media when they are concerned about the poverty situation. And this, fourthly, this poverty line can facilitate the public's discussion on poverty. Now, how do we determine the poverty line? We feel that we can base it on we can have a certain percentage of the median household income, and to set up a threshold. Now, many groups use this as a measure in the past. Why is it good? Now, in the Census and Statistics Department, they already have enough figures for us to measure this. And secondly, it's rather simple. And also, internationally, for instance, in OECD countries, most of them use the 50% of median household income as the poverty line. So a unitary line can take into account of sharing resources within households, and it can allow comparison among households. Ms. Chu Tin-lok, the Hong Kong Federation of Trade Union Social Affairs Committee. Now, I am a member of the FTU. I would like to share with you 3 issues. Firstly, what's our objective? Now, we need to know the target before we know how to measure. And secondly, what's the point of having a poverty line? Is it merely for establishing, drawing up welfare policies? Or should we determine our economic development policies, taking that into account too? And thirdly, we need to find a way to draw a line. Now, we need to help those who are most needy. We have a Gini coefficient of 0.537 that speaks for itself. Now, $3,000 level, and we still only have OAA, old age allowance, living allowance, and so on. These are not enough. Now, the poverty issue is a macro issue. We have intergenerational poverty, so the FTU should all the way places emphasis on employment-oriented measures. We hope that the government should not just draw a hard and fast poverty line. That there should be 2 major principles. First, absolute poverty. There should be guarantee of basic living standard. Secondly, there should be a certain percentage of median household income. That would be the second principle, and they will provide a good picture. Now, on the first principle, the government uses the CSSA household income as a poverty line, but we have doubts about that. Now, Mr. Legwood Wong, New People's Party. Now, if we merely use 50% of the median household income, this may not reflect the true living picture, because consumer prices are rising, the renminbi is strengthening, and living costs are higher by the year. So we should learn from Taiwan. We should include minimum household spending that is 60% of median household income as the poverty line. And for those who are below the poverty line, we should not just give them money, aid, we should help them to make a living. Now, the Nobel Prize winner said that the higher the amount of assistance, they are less eager to find jobs, and they will be unemployed for longer periods, and there will be jobs that are not filled. So we should not just distribute money. There should be job training and assist the small and medium enterprises, so that the poor can know how to catch fish rather than to receive fish. Now, so that they fall out of the poverty net. Mr. Lee Kwok-keung, Ms. Fo Lin, Concerned Group of Women Poverty. Now, speakers have suggested 50% of the median household income. We should take into account expenditure. Now, for median household income, the 50%, we suggest that would be a starting point. Poverty situation. Now, many people are near or in absolute poverty, and is out of sync with the rest of society. The median household income should be raised. Now, the disadvantaged groups. Now, we should not have a uniform measure across the board. It depends on the actual situation of the group. For instance, working poor, female poor workers, elderly poverty, CSSA policy, that should be reviewed from time to time. Now, as speakers have said, the CSSA policy has not been reviewed in 6 years. It's now nearly 2013. The living costs have increased a great deal in the interim. Now, our policies should move with the times. We shouldn't just engage in talk. For the assisted or for the stakeholders, they should get actual benefit. The poverty line should not just be financial, housing allowance, medical allowance. Now, 60% of median household income plus expenditure. The CSSA recipients say that they have asked whether the aid they are getting is a charity or a right. There's another issue. The Poverty Commission, it can attend the meetings of the stakeholders and take part in the poverty discussion. Mr. Yim Tat Ming, Ms. Leung Yiu-chung, Leung Kwok-tong, Mr. Leung Kwok-tong. Several years ago, now there was a saying in the mainland which applies to Hong Kong now. Now, sometimes couples who are poor, they have many problems, even for the middle-aged. Now, in order to maintain a reasonable living standard, even middle class have difficulty. So it's the social welfare system is also at fault. For instance, the income threshold is $9,000 for public housing. For those school leavers today, they earn a bit more. Now, if you get married, then people are liable to be divorced. Now, for transport subsidy, now there is means test. So couples divorce in order to get the allowance. Now, old age living allowance. Now, just last week, the policy was passed with a lot of insincerity. Now, reporters asked, now because of the means test, whether there are people who get divorced because of that. Mr. Chung, Mr. Secretary, now the means test was passed now, and yet the problem is not resolved. Now, so that should be a lesson for you. When you drop any kind of means test, you should be careful. You shouldn't just try to pass the measure forcefully with the aid of the DAB and so on.
組織幹事。
係，大家好。
Ms. Ho Kin-kee Econ Feminist Cooperative Network, we are grassroots women. We use the environmental concept to improve the lives of the women at the grassroots. Our members are mainly grassroots women in the grassroots. We are working part-time, and we may be housewives. And we also recycle items to make ends meet. On a daily basis, we come into contact with cleaning workers and scavengers, and we work and cooperate with them. The women at the grassroots level have difficulties in finding jobs. And it's very difficult for them to get out of poverty. Some of us have to scavenge to make a living. So we propose that the government should draw a poverty line. We have several suggestions. First, we don't agree using the CSSA payment level as an indicator for the poverty line, because the CSSA payment has been lagging behind all the time and it doesn't catch up with the inflation rate. So we suggest that the CSSA payment level should not be used as an indicator for the poverty line. Also, we strongly urge the government to draw up the poverty line as soon as possible so that the government knows where the poverty in our community lies and the appropriate measures can be drawn up. Thirdly, we should include a sexual perspective in drawing the poverty line, because the COP has been neglecting the problem of poverty among women in 2010. There are 600,000 women who earn less than $6,000 a month, and we have to make available after school care services for children of these women. And we have to cancel the 418 continuous employment criteria. Ms. Lau Xingping, Hong Kong Women Workers Association. Good afternoon, everyone. Let me share some information. In the CNS Department's statistics in 2010, there was this survey which shows clearly that if we do comparisons on household income, the welfare policies for the low-income families are very few. Let me cite an example. If a family has a monthly income of $5,600 and with the alleviation measures in place, the income is only increased by $300 to $5,900. For the higher income families, the increase can be bigger to around by around $1,800. The information of the survey also shows that in areas like medical and education measures, the resources devoted on low-income families are relatively few or small. So can the COP members please understand that we want to set a poverty line, not because you want to obtain welfare for the poor. That's not what we wanted. If that is the case, and people are very concerned where the poverty line should be drawn and how many people will get the money. But in fact, this is not the case. So we suggest that the poverty line should be, well, in fact, several poverty lines should be drawn. As Professor Wang Hong suggested, a poverty line of 60% of the median income can also be drawn up, because then we will be able to assess the effectiveness of the poverty alleviation measures, how many people will plunge into a state of poverty. And also, oftentimes, these measurements also lack a perspective from the women. If we calculate it on the basis of monthly household income, then it might be twisted, because it's always the husbands who are going to work and earn money. Well, let's repeat that. Let's not just take reference of the family or the household, because we want to also take into the perspective of the carer. So, okay, thank you very much, Ms. Lau. Mr. Chair Hoikin. Ms. Ching, I hope that the electrical can set a good example, because you work overtime all the time. A lot of the electrical members over the years, they get more tired day after day, and their hair turn white day by day. This is relayed to me by an old friend, Mr. Matthew Zhang. I hope that your hair can grow a lot more next year, and we should be in good health. Why is it that we have to have relief measures? Because we are in bad health all the time. Yes, Ms. Ching, can you speak on the topic? I think preventive measures are more important. So I hope that you understand why I don't agree with the setting of a poverty line. Why is there a poverty problem? Why do we have to work on poverty? This is my first question. Second, this is a paper written down by a 17-year-old person the day before yesterday, and this was written actually downstairs at the electrical building, and he hoped that the government can put up policies that the poor people will not be plunged in a poor state. And we don't have to worry about it, the poverty problem. Well, doing a bypass surgery requires a cost of $180,000. How can we make sure that a family doesn't have to worry about making ends meet? What we're doing, is it worth what we're doing? Is there anything else we should do? Mr. Wong, Kwai-chung Estate Labor Rights Concern Group. Many friends just said that the Gini coefficient is 0.537, is almost on the verge of is a very dangerous level. I don't want to repeat all the poverty problem. If without a poverty line, how can the poverty alleviation measures be drawn up? The government has said it's done a lot, but then when we look at the grassroots workers, they are getting poorer and poorer. Without the poverty line, how can we draw up good relief measures to help these families? For many of the government policies, housing subsidy, travel subsidies, students' assistance schemes, medical fee waiver mechanism, and so on, they come with a lot of administrative hassles. There are means tests, income tests. Now, if we have the poverty line, then we can standardize all these criteria or standards in these schemes, and so that the grassroots families can get their basic rights realized. This is not most important, but what's most important is whether the poor families can, we know whether the life has been improved. If we can have more than one poverty lines, say at 50, 60, or 70%, then we can draw up different appropriate measures to address the problem. Say, if we find that there is cross-generation poverty, we can do a lot more policies to help the students. Now, on top of that, we should have a basic living line. It should not be as low as the CSSA payment level at the moment. For example, we should look at whether a student should have more than one sets of uniform or one more meals. So if we have the poverty line, then we will be able to really help the grassroots levels. Ms. Vinci Wong, Kwai-chung Community Trade Union. Ms. Chung Bik Mui, Hong Kong Association for the Survivors of Women Abuse. Thank you, Chairman. Our association comprises mainly single-parent families. We are on CSSA to make our ends meet. And we are victims of domestic violence. There are maintenance fees for these single-parent families. But then because there are loopholes in the law, it gives excuses for the ex-husbands of these women, saying that they don't have the money to pay for the maintenance fees, and they ask their wives to apply for CSSA. And these women who have been abused, they are so frightened and they've sustained a lot of psychological injury, and they have to quarrel with their husbands, and then they may sustain further injury. So they dare not chase after the maintenance fees from their husbands. So they have nothing else to turn to but to apply for CSSA. So they are plunged into poverty because of this. There is, say, a family of 3, and only 2 children are eligible for CSSA. And because the mother hasn't resided for Hong Kong for 7 years, she is not entitled to any welfare measures. So they stay in this poverty state for a long time. So I hope that the government can pay attention on how to help these women who don't meet the 7-year residence rule. Actually, there are a lot of members like this in our association. So I also hope that the administration, that the government can set up a court relating to maintenance fees and domestic violence to help these women to chase after these old maintenance fees, and the children can lead a good life. If they depend on CSS for a long time, that would not be good enough because CSS payment doesn't catch up with the cost of living. So this is my hope. Mr. Nicholas Chan Hofung, Academic for Universal Pension. Mr. Chairman, we see old ladies scavenger cardboard boxes on the street. This is not something new. Some district councillors even complained that they are affecting the look of the city. What has happened to Hong Kong? The SWD and the Secretary for Labour and Welfare, Mr. Matthew Zhang, the kind of attitude you have in handling this type of social problem, that's not good. And Mrs. Carol Lam, who used to be the director of SW Social Welfare, she even suggested cutting CSS payment. If you use that kind of mentality, it's like giving away the waste or the unwanted to the poor, then it's not good enough. I hope that the poverty line is a good starting point. If the administration's mindset doesn't change, that is not good. They always say that the resources are going to be devoted to only the most needy, and we have to look at the sustainability of our resources, and that will only create a lot of conflicts in the society. The society is getting poorer with all these alleviation measures. Why is it that elderly have to scavenge cardboard boxes? Why are we allowing this to happen? It seems that you're not doing effective measures. And Mr. James Michael Tan said that people should be taught to catch fish instead of giving them fish. We have to look carefully how to draw up a poverty line. What is its function? How do we follow up once the line is set? Now, I also wanted to raise that the universal retirement protection should not be subsumed under the Poverty Commission, or else it would be just sticking to the old line of thinking. Ms. Zhang Fanlan, DAB. Thank you, Chairman, members and friends. The poverty problem is a problem to be addressed by any society. Hong Kong is a modern society, but it is no exception. In the past, Hong Kong has used CSSA as a sort of safety net to help the needy. The government has launched a number of poverty alleviation measures, but regrettably, there isn't a standardized type of yardstick. So in the process, there are divergent views on how the policies are implemented, and there is a lack of coordination. if we use the CSSA payment level as a bottom line, so taking the cost of living in 2011, some households are actually living under the CSSA payment level. So if we set a poverty line and then focus our discussion on that line, then it would facilitate the policy makers to focus on the most needy group. And on a long-term basis, we would also be able to gauge or assess the poverty situation in Hong Kong and what is blocking the upward social mobility in Hong Kong, and so that we can draw up long-term measures to help those in need and also reduce social disparity in the community. Mr. Wong Ho-ming, League of Social Democrats, Chairman. In 2009, Mr. Zhang, D9 officer, no matter how big is the poor population, the government will adopt a pragmatic approach and an all-round approach to tackle poverty problem. What he meant is using the average CSSA payment level and the 24 multidimensional indicators. It's very confusing. It's very complicated. To the NGO's request for poverty line, he neglected it. And then the same officer on the same topic, and he's now taking a different stance, and he's saying that he is doing concrete things. So the League of Social Democrats has this basic stance. If we have a poverty line, then we can have a standard budget approach. We can list the living costs of a family and list out the expenses, and that can be the first line. And then second, we can use a relative indicator, say 50% of the median household income. Some people say 40%, some say 60%. Well, we found that acceptable. It doesn't matter if we have several more lines. But I'm here today to scold you. Mr. Matthew Zhang, please lift your head. You said you are going to be frank and sincere. You are not flexible. We are talking about poverty line. We use two different types of standards, but your poverty line is using this asset ceiling and income ceiling, $186,000 and $6,600 respectively. The way you are doing it is really humiliating the elderly and segregating the different levels of the elderly. We want universal retirement protection, and we want to do away with the means test. Please don't subsume it under the Poverty Commission. Liberal Party, Mr. Kenny Yu. Thank you, Chairman. The administration has been saying that it will strengthen poverty alleviation, but unfortunately, and 1 in 6 to 7 person is a poor person. We noticed that the government is getting richer. In 1997, the Foreign Exchange Research Fund is only $700 billion. Now is $2,600 billion. So we see that the government should have the strength and the power to eradicate poverty. Where has its determination gone? The chief executive has appointed the COP, the former one, to set a poverty line. We think is appropriate because with these official statistics, we'll be able to gauge the poverty situation in Hong Kong. The controversy now is where to draw the line. The COP thinks that it should take reference of the 27 indicators and also take a reference of the EU and OECD and to draw it at a 50% or 60% of the median household income and also the pre-tax median household income. But we think that in drawing up poverty line, we think that there should be an official standard. The key is how it can represent the poverty situation in Hong Kong. We hope that once the line is drawn, then you would be able to find solutions. The government should target at different needs of different poor groups and come up with different measures. We think that the government should not just act in the way it used to. It shouldn't just give out candies. It should drop concrete policies to alleviate poverty.
Mr. Young Ming from New Arrival Women Leagues. From February to May, we conducted a survey on new arrival women in relation to housing and living expenses. Many of them are living in subdivided units. They earned under $10,000. Whether we look at the 50% median income or whatever, we must look at the expenditure and also the distribution issues. When you apply for public rental housing, more than half of your household members must be permanent residents. So many single parents and new arrivals cannot be eligible. And many people have been queuing for more than 6 or 7 years, and they are still living in subdivided units. I think there should be a subsidy in relation to the poverty line. A subsidy of 3,000 should be given to the PRH waiting list applicants until they get a PRH flat. 97% of these new arrival women used to work on the mainland. And now in Hong Kong, according to our survey, 85% of them are not working. They want to, but they have to take care of both their children and also their elders. And the family members and the husbands may think that they are not making a contribution because they do not work. Some are just working as casual workers, more just 10 to 20%. They are not getting employment assistance. And some are only getting $20 an hour to take care of children. You should give these carers the money that they use on childcare. The Hong Kong Council of Social Service, Ms. Mariana Chan, will welcome the setting of a poverty line. There should be 3 criteria. It must be objective. It must be a stable poverty line. Well, all along, we do not support using the CSSA line because there was a cut of 11.1% in CSSA payments. So this line cannot allow us to monitor the trend with poverty. And the poverty line should be commensurate with social development. And thirdly, it must be something easily understood by the public. Internationally, in developed countries, they would refer to a certain percentage of median family income. Hong Kong CSS suggests that it should be 50%. You may use another line, but once the poverty line is set, we have to make the best use of it. Here we have a few suggestions. We propose that annually we announce the poverty line, and then an analysis as well as measures to alleviate poverty should be announced. Poverty is an overall phenomenon. While you set a poverty line, the administration should look at different groups, women, elderly, children, and the situation of these groups of people are in, and also the poverty line should be used to set targets, indicators, and objectives for poverty alleviation. This can show that the government is determined and sincere in helping the poor. Or more than 10 deputations have not come, so we haven't used up all the time for this session. The next session will start in 10 odd minutes. So maybe we can ask the Secretary to respond, or we can ask the deputations to say something in response. Because we are going to have another thematic discussion session among members next time. So your response, Secretary. Members, deputations, good afternoon. First of all, I would like to thank the 25 deputations and individuals who have spoken on this subject. I have to stress or clarify a few points here. First, the re-establishment of the Commission on Poverty illustrates the fact that this term of government attaches importance to poverty alleviation. By setting up the COP, this term of government would like to do something effective to alleviate poverty, and the COP would also be used to take on board the community views. There are people from different walks of life represented on the Commission. 4 electrical members indeed are members, and there will also be task force. But of course, we're not here to talk about the composition of the COP. The setting of the poverty line reflects our political courage. As the representative from Oxfam has put it, this is a show of commitment. It means 2 things. First, the administration is determined and has the courage to face up to the problems with poverty. And the poverty line serves as a measurement tool to assess the poverty situation. Second, it can tell people whether government initiatives are achieving the targets and objectives intended. The Commission on Poverty convened its first meeting yesterday, and you must understand that the first meeting is just a start. You cannot expect a lot of things to be resolved in the first meeting. We have been stressing the need for communication, and we're also mindful of the experience of how the poverty line is make use of in other countries. For example, in EU, in OECD countries, as some deputations have referred to, some would say it should be 50%, some say 60%. Our objective is to start our work in the first quarter next year, 2013. And we hope to come up with some initial proposals within 2013. That's a timetable, that's a roadmap. We hope we can present our proposals within the next year, and so that we can get a preliminary yardstick on which we can have further discussions. Of course, we're going to involve experts, our government economists, colleagues from the Census and Statistics Department, academics, professors from the Central Policy Unit will all be involved. Under the Commission, there will be a task force on social security and retirement protection, which is tasked to take matters forward and to present a report to the Commission. That's all I can report on the first meeting. Since this is the first meeting, there's not much I can comment on. For this government, poverty is one of the most important focal points for us. We want to tackle poverty and also aging in place for the elderly as a matter of priority. Housing is also important, of course, social and economic development. And so 2 out of 5 major issues are on the top priorities of this term of government. Well, your views will be relayed back to the COP, and your chairman is also a member of the COP. We are sincere and we are committed to do a good job in alleviation of poverty. Let's hope that we can join hands in doing this. How many deputations would like to speak again? I have to count the time allowed. 7, 8, 9, 9. So 1 minute each. And then I'll see if members have anything to say. And the next session will start at 4 p.m. Hands up again. I have to jot down which deputations would like to speak. Who would like to speak? Ms. Kwok Yun-yi. I have a question for Mr. Matthew Chung. The measures, the money that you spend on the initiatives cannot reach the grassroots. The re-establishment of the COP is not going to help grassroots workers. There are many hurdles getting in the way. I hope the task force under the COP will seriously consider the concept of the proposal of low-income supplement suggested by Oxfam. They came to the North District. They talked to us face to face. Our members think that their proposal is a good one. If we have a low-income supplement, that would provide real assistance to the working poor. Please consider this proposal. We still have 20 minutes, so I'll have 2 deputations speaking first, and then the secretary will be invited to respond by not speaking longer than 1.5 minutes. Yes? Mr. Wong Kwai-yao. I want to make 2 supplementary points. The secretary said that in 2013 there will be preliminary proposals. Many deputations have referred to the adoption of 50% medium household income. But you can have the line set up first and then followed by a review. After the setting of an official poverty line, other policies would fall in, including the review on CSSA. We have heard about the CSSA review for a long time, but nothing has happened. If the poverty line is set, then other welfare initiatives can make adjustments accordingly. We hope the Secretary would not just look at the poverty line, we should also look at social mobility, which is for the long term. And intergenerational poverty is also a matter of concern. We hope the Secretary also pay attention to all these other issues. Secretary, Ms. Kwok, you said the work incentive, travel subsidy, and other initiatives are not going to be able to be helpful to those living in remote districts. This Friday, we are going to the App Finance Committee to adopt the dual track system. The income limit will be raised for individuals. If you earn no more than 8,105, including MPF contributions, you're eligible. That would take effect on the 1st of January. For those living in North District, Tin Shui Wai, and other grassroots workers, they will be benefited. The COP has no preconceived idea. We have an open mind. We'll do whatever can be implemented. We want to pool our wisdom, put our heads together to work something out with organizations like yours to help the poor. It's a mammoth task. What we need is to promote better communication. As for the idea of setting up a poverty line to be followed by review, and also we should look at social mobility. Well, a poverty line is just a tool. There are task forces under COP. One will be looking at employment and education, another on social participation. We will be looking at different groups that need more help, such as ethnic minorities. This all boils down on the promotion of social mobility. Next. Hands up again. Ms. Cheng and Ms. Chi. Ms. Cheng. This world is big. And if we look at China, China has a large land mass. Why is it that we are eligible for household registration back on the mainland? When they move to Hong Kong, when women move to Hong Kong, they will lose their household registration status. And I would like to know how much money is spent on social welfare. If we do farming again, then perhaps we can at least have food. Can the government do something in the provision of land for agriculture activities? And why do we always look at money and we think money can solve all problems? Why? I would like to know how much money is spent on education and welfare last year and this year, and then are we getting a good deal out of it? There are people who like to have a poverty line, but I would like to organize more activities. There are many enterprises which present good models for reference. We are happy to learn from Mr. Matthew Chung that this term of government is committed and has the political determination to actively look into retirement protection. I would like to reiterate the views of FTU. We must get to the root of the problem. Poverty line is not just a tool to enable us to come up with better social policies. It also affords us an opportunity to look at the industrial or economic structure of Hong Kong. There are people who think that poverty is caused by individuals' own problems. There are people who can only take up low added value and low income jobs. But that has to do with the economic structure. People's income is very much affected by our economic structure. Let me respond to Ms. Cheng quickly. You asked about the expenditure on social welfare. The recurrent expenditure, the biggest one, is on education. For every $100 spent, 23 is spent on education. But if we take into account the recently introduced OALA, then $19 for every 100 spent is on social welfare. So it's second to education only. Social welfare is not just about giving a handout. It's a safety net. We need to help the disadvantaged and people in need. You mentioned an important point, and that there are social enterprise or organizations hiring elderly people. Social enterprise is about innovation. We hope that through SE, we can promote the elderly employment and employment of women and new arrivals. There is a lot of room to promote social enterprise, and a task force under the COP will be doing this. And I also agree with the FTU representative. Economic development is important to all these. Through readjustment of economic structure, through the diversification, we can promote social mobility, and that's certainly very positive as far as alleviation of poverty is concerned. Mr. Ho Chun Kit.
Now, just now the administration said that the Poverty Commission will start the poverty line work in 2013. We hope the government will give us a timetable when this work will be completed, when the poverty line indicator will be established, because if this drags on further, we may have nothing. And different deputations have suggested different measures, 40%, 50%, 60%. Now, we think a single line would be the best. As for 40 or 60% standards, that can be used as well, because when you assess the policies, you can use different lines and try to project the effectiveness. So these several lines are useful for reference. I'd just like to make a few points. Now, just now the Secretary said that the transport allowance may be on a two-track basis, and now for singletons applying for public housing, the upper income limit is $700,000. Even those people may not qualify for transport allowance. Now, can you reconsider such a threshold? Now, very often your policies are not very user-friendly. The residents don't know where to get the forms, and they find that they have to submit a lot of information for applying for the transport allowance or for the allowance in respect of subdivided units. So we hope that your forms will be more user-friendly, and we hope your staff can help the Kai Fongs fill out the forms. Now, first, Mr. Ho of Oxfam, we agree with your proposal. Now, in the coming year, we hope to speed up our process. Now, the chief officer of the Oxfam is sitting on the commission as well, and he has been urging us to improve, and we can make use of your expertise as well. And concerning the Community Care Fund, now that will be the subject of one of the subcommittees in the Poverty Commission. So we will try to make the commission's work more effective as a whole. How to be more user-friendly. So we will look closely into all the suggestions. Ms. Ho, I'd just like to ask Mr. Matthew Chung. Now, just now I said that you should let the stakeholders take part in the Poverty Commission. I've been saying this in the Council. Now, the officials say things that are not in sync with those views of the groups. I think we should sit together and talk. That would be better. Now, I would like to ask Mr. Chung, can we as stakeholders discuss at the same table as the officials on the poverty alleviation issue? Any others from this side? Mr. Leung Yiu-chung? Mr. Secretary, I have a simple question. Now, just now, you said that the administration is really motivated to resolve the poverty issue. I said that the previous administration was not motivated enough. Chairman, can I respond now? Now, first the question from Ms. Ho. You asked whether the stakeholders can take part in our discussion. Now, it's been decided yesterday in the Commission that every month we will go to the districts and come into direct contact with the public, and various committees, we have 6 of them, will also be mobilized. So we will go to the districts and hear your views, and once the poverty line is drawn, we will listen to the reaction by the community, just as we do today. Now, even though we don't have a long time today, we attribute a lot of importance to your views. Now, the question was asked whether the previous administration wasn't doing its job. Now, in the previous administration, we tried to implement the 53 proposals by the Poverty Commission. Most of them have been implemented, so it can be said that our tasks were in keeping with the 53 recommendations by the Poverty Commission, including the transport allowance. So we do have a new set of agenda for every administration. Each set has its own emphases. Any questions from this side? Mr. Chan Lap-fung. I have two questions. First, will the government implement universal retirement protection free of means test? Secondly, will the government table the universal retirement protection agenda within the Poverty Commission and have a task force for that? Mr. Matthew Chung says that you are committed. Now, there are many political parties now want you to revise the old age living allowance. Now, but you haven't done it. We want universal retirement protection. It shouldn't be a Poverty Commission issue. This is universal. Why is it within Poverty Commission? Now, your poverty line is now 186,000. Now, you accepted the DAB's proposals, 1,200, 2,000, 3,000. You divide the elderly. Now, the confusion is caused in relation to the old age living allowance. You should be responsible. Let me respond to Mr. Chen and also Mr. Wong on universal retirement protection. Now, I said this last time within the committee. Now, universal retirement protection for this administration, we do have the 3 pillars as our existing system. We try to improve that. In the process, we adopt an open mind, and within the Poverty Commission, we have a task force on retirement protection, among other, as one of the 2 main topics. Now, many speakers asked whether we can review the CSSA system. Now that's the as for the retirement protection, we know there are deficiencies, such as regarding the MPF. The government knows that, so there are reforms in progress concerning the MPF. Now we try to adopt a step-by-step approach. Now, the Poverty Commission is a good platform to look at all issues affecting people's livelihood. If we set up a new commission, then that would be maybe redundant or overlapping. There are 3 in the middle. Yun first. Now, the main point is that there's a problem with the government's financial management. The government is richer, and yet the people feel poorer. This is a problem with the government's thinking. You have to change that thinking, or else the Poverty Commission will serve no good purpose. Now, many employers say they can't hire enough people, and you are so stringent in providing transport allowance. Now, I hope the government really changes its thinking. Ms. Young, may? I'd like to ask Mr. Chung concerning retraining. Now, you said that there are lots of resources for new arrivals. Actually, you leave them to their own resource efforts. Now, you don't have a one-stop service. Now, there are only cleaning work and security guards training. Now, we hope that you should certify the newly arrived women. Those within the 30 to 40 age group, you should allow them to study secondary school so that they can be retrained for office work and retail work, so that they are not just cleaners or security guards. Now, you don't have any courses for new arrivals, because if they go to the same class as the unemployed, this doesn't help them, because there is no child care service. The classes are 9 to 6. They are not helped. there should be a one-stop course, consolidated course for them to find their place in the new society. Now, the speaker said that we should modify our thinking. That's why we are accepting the need for a poverty line. This is a new approach, and the old age living allowance is an important landmark. It improves the livelihood for over 400,000 elderly persons. Now, we worked hard in the recent weeks, and eventually it's been passed. It really benefits people. Now, Ms. Yeung said that retraining doesn't help the new arrivals. Now, I think you may not quite understand our retraining scheme. One of the main points is that we try to help the new arrivals. If the women are not aware of that, I hope we can talk to you after this meeting and find out what you need. It's not just cleaning and security work. We also companion for pregnant women and catering industry and retail. So we try to re-equip the new arrivals. There are courses that are under test. The child is brought along, and we offer a child care service that's free. We are working that on a pilot basis. Now, I hope that the member doesn't mind because there is not enough time, but in the next segment, members will have time to speak. There will be a new group of deputations. Now, I hope the Secretary can answer about the timetable. That's been asked by many speakers. Can you leave this question till the next session? Now, those who wish to listen can stay behind because we allow the other deputations to come in within the 5-minute break. There should be 7 members staying within. The Secretary said that there should be 7 members. So we thank the deputations for coming. You can sit in the gallery if you wish to listen. There are 35 deputations coming in.